We're going to continue our exploration of the Python shell by using the shell to do some example Python code, as well as to explore some of the database modeling capability. To start out, I'm going to create the shell by going into the company root. If I right click here, I say open an integrated terminal. Remember, we have to be in the root folder. We have to have access to the manage.py file, and you'll see that there that it is in the company root. So to get into the shell, we just type in Python manage.py shell. This is one of those utility functions, and you'll get this this prompt, this distinctive prompt. This brings us into the Python shell. And by the way, you can do a lot of things with this. I could say, for example, x equals 2. Anything that you can do in Python, you can do inside this shell, and it will work fine. If I say, for example, that if x is greater than 2, I can say 1, 2, 3, 4 print, because indenting, of course, is important in Python. I can say print yes, else, and I could say print no. And again, anything that, and then once you get to the empty line, just hit return and it will activate the code. And since x is not greater than 2, it's equal to 2, you'll see that it runs. So if you want to try anything with Python, if you're not sure if it works, the shell is a really great way to do that. What we're going to do, though, first, we're going to really focus on database models today. And you'll notice this is the database model that we had, that you built in the earlier example. And let's go ahead and see if we can activate that and play around with the database shell a little bit. I can say from HR. HR is the name of our application that we created. It is also at the same level as manage.py, so I can refer to it as HR dot. Dot brings us inside the folder. If you look inside the folder, there is a file called models. So models.py, so I say from HR dot models. That brings us inside that folder, and then we can say import, and then the name of the class, which is employee. If I do that now, I have imported the employee class. I can now create new employees. So I can say E equals, I can say employee, and I can say last name equals my last name, and then first name. Again, with Python, you can use single quotes or double quotes as long as you are consistent. And if I do that, that does not actually change the database. It simply creates an object. If I want to commit those changes, excuse me, I can say e.save, and that will commit the change to the database. Now you might say, well, how do I know that? So first of all, let's just type E. You'll see that there's an employee there. How do I know that? Well, that's one of the reasons I had you download the browser, the DB browser for Sql Lite. So let me go into that, and I can show you a little bit what you can do with that. I'm going to say open database, and I'm going to navigate now to the folder where that is located, and the database container is db.sqlite3. And if I open that, you will see, if we go to the correct table, by default, the name of the table is the name of the application, which is HR, underscore, and then the name of the class, which is employee. So if I do that, you'll see that my name is there. I can add a new record to this table, and by going here and saying new record, and add that, and we'll say create a new employee called Lorraine Robinson. And this does not, by the way, commit the changes to the database. You have to say write changes. Now this is a really great utility because it's a little harder to see in the shell. The utility allows you to see it much easier. Now if I go back to Visual Studio, I can say employee dot objects dot all, and if I do that, you'll see now that Lorraine Robinson is there. By the way, the reason that is showing up that way is because this method was in effect. This is called a magic method. This str with double underscores. This is 2 underscores here and 2 underscores here. Python has a number of these methods. They're really, really cool. They always do something unexpected. And whatever this method returns is how the object will be displayed when you print it out. So in this case, I'm referring to last name, which is, of course, one of the columns, first name, which is one of the columns. In classes in Python, you must refer to the name of a column with the word self in front of it, self dot and self dot. So, and I concatenated a comma space in between the two, so it prints out actually as Mark underscore Serva, comma Mark and Robinson, comma Lorraine. It's easy to then use this. There's a number of utilities that you can use with this. So I can say, for example, employee.objects.get, and I can say ID equals, let's say 2, and that is my name. Okay. If I want to say, I can just use the up arrow and I can go to 3, and that is my wife's. If I say 1, there is no 1 at this point, so I will get an error that says employee does not exist. I could go back now to the utility, the DB browse utility, and let's add another employee. Okay, let's add somebody else in my family. So we'll say new record, and we'll add my son. Okay, and I'm going to say write changes, and if I do that, I've committed those changes to the database. Now I can go back here and I can say all employee objects all. You'll see that my son is now there. Now you cannot use get, the get object, the get method here if you're going to return more than one thing. You can't use get, you have to use filter. So if you want to use get more than one object back, you could say filter, and then you could say last name equals Serva. And this will return the both my son's name and my name. By the way, you can store this information also in an object. The fact that there's excuse me, more than one, and you can store that in E, for example. And now if I print E will actually contain both. And you may remember that with Python you can subset, so you can actually subscript this. So I can say E sub 0, which is the first object in E, and if I do that, that is me. And if I say E sub 1, that is of course my son. Now, why am I showing you this? Well, this doesn't seem like it's very relevant, but this is the actual Python code that you use to manipulate and save objects in a Python application, that is a Django application. So what we're doing here is the way we're manipulating this is if you wanted, for example, to get all dishwashers, you could say, and you had a category called dishwashers, you could use the filter method to get all the dishwashers. If you wanted to create, for example, if you want to add yourself to a website and become a customer, you would use the approach that I showed you to save the object. And so the code here is relevant because you can use it directly in an application. Okay. It also, by the way, allows you to filter. The filter can be used, but you can also change that with order by. So I can say order by, let's say, first name. And by the way, the order of this is not important. You can put order by first and filter second. It doesn't really matter, but you can change these. And now if I say E, you'll notice that my name is first and Ryan is second. But I can say negative first name, and if I do that, it would be in descending order. So if I do that, and now I say E, Ryan is first. If you're wondering, this sounds an awful lot like SQL, you would be 100% correct. What's going on here is that the code that you're writing is converted by Django into SQL and then executed against the database. Again, the advantage of this is that you do not have to learn different dialects of SQL if you're using Django. Instead, you simply use this one version of the language. It's automatically generated and creates the correct dialect of SQL, and then it executes it against the database. Okay? Hope that helps. We'll see you in class.